Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia and welcome back to the Overwatch Contenders Roundup. So this is the second part of our look at the results from trials in week 3, and in this one we'll go through 4 regions. We will go through South America, Australia, EU, and the North American region. The North American region I now have the bracket for, so that's pretty cool. So we've got a lot to get through, and I think we should crack on. So we're going to start in South America, where we saw Up Gaming, Burnout, Capybara Esports, Pacific Ocelots, Doge Geek, No Ping Esports, Glacial, Ignisix, Betrayed, Night Haze, Anime Club, and Las Lagartijas. And if I'm saying that wrong, I really do apologise, that last one, because unfortunately I'm British and I don't do saying foreign words very well, unfortunately, so I do apologise for that. But moving on to round 12, and we see that Burnout take on Night Haze. This is a 3-1 win for Burnout. Glacial will take on Betrayed. This is a 3-0 win for Betrayed. Doge Geek would get a 3-1 victory over Las Lagartijas. And No Ping Esports would lose out 3-1 to Anime Club, with them moving on to the quarterfinals. And this is where the seeded teams, or the top seeded teams, come in. So, Up Gaming would take on Burnout. This would be a 3-0 win for Up Gaming. Ignisix would take on Betrayed, and this would be a narrow win for Ignisix, 3-2. Again, another narrow win for Capybara Esports, 3-2 over Doge Geek. And Pacific Ocelots will get a 3-1 victory over Anime Club. In the semi-finals, we saw Up Gaming take on Ignisix, and this would be a 3-2 win for Up Gaming. And Capybara Esports would take on Pacific Ocelots, and again, another narrow match would see Capybara Esports come out on top, 3-2. In the grand final, of course, Up Gaming would take on Capybara Esports, and it would be a 3-1 win for Up Gaming to see them take the title of Trials Week 3 champions for Season 1 of 2020 in South America. And because there are so many names associated with the Contenders regions at the moment, with Season 1 and all that, it is very long to say that. But going through to Contenders Week 3 will be Up Gaming, Capybara Esports, Pacific Ocelots, Ignisix, Anime Club, Betrayed, Burnout, and Doge Geek. Staying in Trials for Week 4 will be Night Haze, Glacials, Las Lagartijas, and No Ping Esports. This was all played on the patch where Echo Tracer, Orisa, and Moira were banned. I believe that is the case for most of this video, although we will see a shift when we move over to Australia, as we will look at now. So, in Australia it was McCree, Widowmaker, Reinhardt, and Brigitte banned for these trials. But we saw Paradigm Shift, Warriors Esports, Scrimbucks, Atletico Esports, Memento for Giver, Ming Yan, ADSL2+, Kraken Esports, Neo Complexity, Excalibur Esports, Classified, and Power Anchors. So, in round 12, we saw Neo Complexity taking on Power Anchors. This would be a surprising 3-2 narrow win for Power Anchors, seeing them go through. ADSL2+ would take on Kraken Esports Club. This would be a 3-0 win for Kraken Esports. Memento for Giver would take on Classified. This would be a 3-0 win for Memento for Giver. And Ming Yan would take on Excalibur Esports, and this would be a 3-0 win for Ming Yan. So, in the quarterfinals, we see the 4 seeded teams come in, and this will be Scrimbucks taking on Power Anchors. A narrow match, but a 3-2 win for Scrimbucks would see them go through. Atletico Esports would take on Kraken Esports Club. This would be a 3-0 win for Kraken Esports Club, with them moving on. Paradigm Shift would take on Memento for Giver, again, and another narrow match, but a 3-2 win for Paradigm Shift would see them through. Warriors Esports will take on Ming Yan, and this would be a 3-1 win for Warriors Esports, as you would expect, with them moving on to the semi-finals. In the semi-finals, we saw Scrimbucks taking on Kraken Esports Club. This would be a dominant 3-0 win for Kraken Esports Club, with them moving on to the final. And Paradigm Shift will take on Warriors Esports, with Warriors Esports getting a 3-0 win here to see themselves in the finals against the Kraken Esports Club. And this would be a 3-0 win for Warriors Esports, sealing out the title of Trials Week 3 champion of Season 1 2020 of Contenders in Australia, because it has a really long name. Goodness me. Anyway, going through to Contenders Week 3 in Australia will be Warriors Esports, Kraken Esports Club, Scrimbucks, Paradigm Shift, Power Anchors, Atletico Esports, Memento for Giver, and Ming Yan. And in Trials Week 4 will be Neo Complexity, ADSL2+, Classified, and Excalibur Esports. We will be taking a look at the main Week 3 tournament for Australia tomorrow. Moving on though, and we will be taking a look now at EU. This is where it gets a bit spicy, because we've got some interesting new teams coming into the EU. So, in the EU, we would see Shoots Medicroup, EU. Disaster, this is a new team, I think made up of the remnants of the old HSL and Eternal Academy lineups. Dreadlords, In Control, HSL Esports, Angry Titans, Samsung Morning Stars, Raspberry Racers, Raw Esports, Chaos Insurgency, Vox Nihili, and Vasta Gaming. So, in the round of 12, we saw Chaos Insurgency go up against Vasta Gaming, and this will be a 3-1 win for Vasta Gaming. Angry Titans will take on the Raspberry Racers. Raspberry Racers actually have a pretty good roster, but they get a 3-0 win over the Angry Titans. Things are not getting any better for that Titans roster, is it? HSL Esports will take on Vox Nihili, and this will be a narrow 3-2 win for Vox Nihili. HSL Esports getting beaten by a team that came up from Open Division Season 2, by the way. HSL Esports still not having the season that they were having last year. They are the defending title holders of the European title, by the way. In Control will take on Raw Esports, and this will be a 3-0 win for Raw Esports. In the quarterfinals, we saw the big teams come in, the seeded teams. So Shoes Crew EU will take on Vasta Gaming, and Vasta Gaming will continue on here with a 3-2 win over Shoes Crew EU. Not a great look from them. Samsung Morning Stars will take on Raspberry Racers. Again, another dominant 3-0 display from the Raspberry Racers will see them continue. Dreadlords will take on Vox Nihili, and this will be a 3-1 win for the Dreadlords. And Disaster will take on Raw Esports, and as you expect with the quality on that Disaster roster, they get a 3-0 win and move on to the semi-finals. In the semi-finals, we saw Vasta Gaming taking on Raspberry Racers. Finally, a team that can take the Raspberry Racers close, but a 3-2 win for the Raspberry Racers would see them proceed to the final. And Dreadlords will take on Disaster, and again, Disaster have got a really good roster, so they get a 3-0 win over the Dreadlords. But in the final, we see Raspberry Racers taking on Disaster, and this was a battle of the X rosters, which is very interesting because Raspberry Racers come out on top with a 3-1 victory. Raspberry Racers are the winners of Contenders Trials Week 3 in Europe for 2020 Season 1, and that adds to their title of Open Division winners, I believe. So, very interesting lineup from the Raspberry Racers, and they are looking very strong as I suspected coming into this. Again, this was played on the hero bands that saw McCree, Widowmaker, Wrecking Ball, and Mercy band. So the bands that we saw in the Overwatch League this weekend just gone. But going through to Contenders Week 3 in the EU will be Raspberry Racers as that number 1 seed, Disaster, Dreadlords, Vasta Gaming, Raw Esports, Samsung Morning Stars, Shoes Crew EU, and Vox Nihili. Spending another week in trials will be Angry Titans, Chaos Insurgency, HSL Esports, and In Control. And I think Angry Titans and HSL Esports will be thoroughly disappointed. I'm not going to lie. Two teams that really haven't been able to get out of the doldrums at the moment. But lastly, and I'm sure you've all been waiting for it, let's take a look at North America. So, in North America, we saw Triumph Square 1, Team Doge. Team Doge is made up of the roster that used to be with Team Envy that have now pulled out, obviously. Sky Foxes, Noble, Revival, Uprising Academy, Scion Esports, Golden Gophers, Hype Unit, Odyssey, and Dark Mode Esports. So, in the round of 12, we saw Dark Mode Esports take on Scion Esports. This would be a 3-2 win for Dark Mode, with them moving on. Revival would take on Hype Unit. This would be a 3-1 win for Hype Unit. I'm sure Revival will be disappointed with that, moving on to the quarterfinals for them. Noble would take on Odyssey. This would be a 3-1 win for Noble, with them moving on. And Uprising Academy would take on Golden Gophers. And at least something to do with the Boston Uprising is winning, because Uprising Academy get a 3-1 win over the Golden Gophers and moves through to the quarterfinals. Uprising Academy, obviously, as we know, haven't exactly had a great time of it recently. They haven't been getting many wins, but this week has actually been a fairly promising week for the Academy. Anyway, moving on to the quarterfinals, and remember they are the last remaining Academy in NA. Team Doge will take on Dark Mode Esports. Again, with the roster we see from Team Doge, it's no surprise that Team Doge get a 3-0 win over Dark Mode Esports. Sky Foxes will take on Hype Unit, and Hype Unit will get a 3-0 win over Sky Foxes. Triumph will take on Noble. Triumph will get a 3-0 win here. And Square 1 would take on Uprising Academy, and the rejuvenation continues with Uprising Academy getting a 3-0 win over Square 1. In the semi-finals, we saw Team Doge take on Hype Unit. This is where Hype Unit's run would end, with Team Doge getting another dominant 3-0 display and going through to the final. Triumph would take on the Uprising Academy, and this is where the Uprising Academy fell short, with Triumph getting a 3-1 win. And in the final, we saw Team Doge taking on Triumph, and it would be a narrow 3-2 win for Team Doge. And they would seal out their first title as a team as Trials Week 3 North America winners for Season 1 of 2020 in Contenders, and would go through as that number 1 seed into Contenders Week 3 in NA, alongside Triumph, Hype Unit, Uprising Academy, Dark Mode Esports, Noble, Sky Foxes, and Square 1. Spending another week in Trials for Week 4 will be Golden Gophers, Odyssey, Revival, and Scion Esports. I'm sure Revival, out of all of those, is going to be one of the most disappointed with their display this week. But that is it for that. And that is it for the results in Trials for week 3. It has been a chunky one, it has been an interesting one, and also we are now catching up with all of the action. We will now be going into the main contenders tournaments for week 3. Some haven't taken place yet, like North America and EU, but some have taken place like Australia, and we will be going through them tomorrow. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.